Hello everyone. If everything works well, you can now already see my screen and you can hear me correctly. Welcome everyone to this webinar. As a topic we chose quite fittingly shedding light on product as a service systems. The topic is product as a service. I'm joined here today, not only me, I'm Matthias Faye as a moderator, but I'm also joined by some of my colleagues, two colleagues, David and Chris, that joined in on the project with respect to product as a service that we did at ETAP Lighting. For myself, maybe, my name is Matthias Faye. I work at Möbius. I'm a sustainability and circular economy consultant there, currently responsible for different projects in the sustainability domain, both with respect to program management, but also with specific implementations. And then normally in one way or another, it's always linked to one of my favorite topics, which is in effect the circular economy. I'm also joined by David from Verhaert. David.
Yeah, indeed. From Verhaert, and we are masters in innovation. That's a little bit the statement that we want to make since almost 50 years right now at this year. From background, I'm a product designer and I'm graduated, if I remind right, at 93. So I noticed a big shift in product design from the real tangible stuff to the more service oriented, and of course also the product as a service thinking steers that one or encourages that one. So it's an entire shift also as a product designer. So, and also from that perspective, I think it's very interesting what we're talking about today.
Okay, perfect. And as a third musketeer, we have Chris van Bellegem.
Yes, I am Chris van Bellegem, ETAP Lighting. ETAP is a lighting specialist, and we work mainly in the domain of sustainable lighting meant for long lifetimes. I have been in several functions at ETAP, and the last 2 years I have only been working on light as a service and our circular business offer.
All right, perfect. So together with us three, for the coming hour, we will take you away with, we'll take you on a journey through product as a service systems, how and when you can implement it, and also give you some practical tips on how to go about. But maybe first some logistics aspects to the webinar. Of course, there will be some questions or discussion topics for sure. Feel free to post them in the chat box. There is a question box that you all have access to. I will be, as a moderator, I will be able to see all the questions, and at the end, I will dispatch them or to myself or to my two colleagues, and we will take the last 15 minutes to look at the most important questions. You will also get a copy of the presentation and also a recording of the webinar if you want to review it later. Normally, 2 days after the webinar, you will always receive this in your mailbox. And probably we will also send you a survey to see what you thought about the webinar and also how we can improve towards the future. But maybe let's get down to business. We have an outline for you for the coming 45 minutes. First, we will try to understand a bit more on what a product as a service system actually is and how it differs with a normal sales-based system or a normal service-based system. Here we would like to understand what the difference is between normal services and also where the circular economy comes into play. And also what kind of a system a product as a service system is and what it is not. That's important for us in the first part. And secondly, we will take a little back step. We will also take a look at how we can use the circular economy as an effective value lever in product as a service systems, both economically and ecologically. And in the last two parts, we will go a little bit more practical. We will look at for me, the key building blocks of a product as a service system, key implementation building blocks. And we chose for this webinar to highlight a bit more circular product design and also sound business casing, which are for me two very important aspects of any circular business model. And in the end, we will open up for questions, like I already said. In between, we will make room for a lot of examples. I think we will also give Chris a lot of time to talk, to show a bit of his practical experience with product as a service. So let's get down to business. Maybe first to get some terminology straight on products as a service. I want to take some time on this because I think it will set the scene for a lot of things that we will talk about later. First of all, I think there are many different ways or business models to bring the value you want to bring it to the market. And some include a lot of services and some include few services. I think it's not because you include a lot of services in or onto your product that you can call yourself a product as a service provider. That is not the case. We can take a look at the services ladder, which is a very interesting framework which was produced by ING. Which already sheds a little bit of light on what the difference is with normal sales-based models. I think at the bottom of the services ladder, you always have a purely product sale where normally no auxiliary services are offered in any kind. Organizations in this case, I think, offer products in a one-off sale. They capture the margin, and then they kind of, I would say, lose contact with the customer for the coming year. So it's a one-off sale. I think in for some years already, and one sector faster than the other, and also more innovative than the other, organizations have been layering up services on top. This is what ING calls, for me, it's a little bit ambiguous. They call it the maintenance model. I think they should call it more like the sales with a services model. But organizations try to pile up services to try to smoothen how customers use their products. And they try to build a better customer experience that way. Normal examples are always basic services like installation, maintenance, guarantee, but you can go very far, and also new technologies, IoT, dashboarding, analytics have opened up the way to more innovative and more value-adding services that are being offered. For example, monitoring, so that the customer can take a look at how the product is being used and how he or she can effectively use the product more efficiently is also something that is becoming more and more popular right now. But the basic thing always remains: we have a product, we sell it, and we pile services on top that can help us generate recurring revenue. That's the sales and the maintenance model then, if you would like to call it that. For me, a mental shift happens when you go a little bit further up the services ladder, when you go into a service model. And it's this type of model that will be the subject of the webinar we will be talking about today. A mental shift happens when you don't offer the product anymore with services, but you offer products as a service in a real services model. And this is what some organizations, for me not many, also in various sectors, have been beginning to do. The simplest way for me to explain this kind of services model is that it's, in a lot of cases, a customer doesn't really want a product, but they want an outcome, they want a result. And in a services model, the organization delivers, the supplier delivers just that, the results, the outcome, and commits to deliver that certain kind of performance. It's the delivering organization, the supplier, that decides how this outcome will be delivered with a product, with what type of product, maybe with a product with some services, maybe with a software, whatever. So in general, in a services model, customers don't want to deal with the product anymore. So for me, that's the notion of risk taking, the risk transfer. It's the producer that is becoming responsible for the outcome that he or she wants to deliver, and has freedom in how he or she can deliver that outcome. And usually in a service model, you also see that there is a transfer of ownership. So in the end, in a services model, there are, in a lot of cases, you will also have a take back guarantee, or any case of a return on the product, so that the producer can revalorize it in his own internal chain, or put it back on the market. So it's that fact that in a lot of cases in a services model, you have a transfer of ownership that actually opens up the way to a lot of interesting circular models, which is one step a little bit further. When the producer remains owner of the equipment that he or she puts on the market, they also have the authority, and they also have the opportunity to redeploy products or parts back into the chain, which is effectively a circular model that can be stacked on top of a services model. So a real circular model entails a service model, I would say, in this respect. For me, this service ladder of ING was quite an eye opener to be able to separate the things off of one another. All right, but I think if we look at the services ladder, we will always look in this webinar at the services model and its circular model. I want to open up and give David some time here to explain a bit what the different types of service-oriented business model, service model that he sees, so that he can explain a bit what the different types are.
Yeah, indeed, because you mentioned already we have a shift in risk because of the shift in the ownership. So we also have a shift in the value, and if we think about a product or product service systems, it's not black and white. So we have a kind of a scale. You see at the left side from pure product, and in the end could be the pure service, but things don't change overnight, of course. So we are challenging some things. So it has to be, let's say, in a gradual movement. So if we look at product service systems, we have the product oriented, the use oriented, or on an extent the result oriented, and we see clearly a kind of value shift. So whether the focus of the value is more into the product or more in the result. And I think from a product designer's perspective, it's also quite crucial because value shift means also, or as a consequence, has a shift in the value perception. And also in the go-to-market, because we used to have a kind of create a value perception as a company or as a brand, thanks to the products that allow us to express, in fact, what the go-to-market and what the company core is. But if we tend to a more service-oriented approach, then things might be completely different, of course. What's also, I think, important, if you look at the more product-oriented approach, we could easily differentiate by looking on the real job to be done. And now if we see to the more result or the more service-oriented approach, we see that this job to be done thinking becomes more and more dominant. So it's also a shift from being a kind of a differentiating value to in fact being the crucial thing. As an example, job to be done thinking, a silly example maybe, when you think about the job to be done of buying a drill, it's the job to be done is not owning the drill, but in fact the job to be done is that you want to drill a hole, and in the end is that you want to hang a frame on the wall. So that's the job to be done thinking. So I think it's clear that that was or used to be a differentiator in the product design business. If we think more in the service oriented business, of course, this job to be done becomes even more crucial. I would also like to highlight that we have, due to this shift in value, also a shift, and I can imagine that Chris will talk more about it, but also in the requirements related to the lifetime of the product. So it's a complete other focus. With a pure product business, indeed, lifetime is in fact less important because we have indeed a kind of agreements about warranty or take back agreements. Once we shift towards the more result oriented, then of course it becomes crucial that the lifetime of the product, because in fact it allows you to perform the service, becomes, I mean, very impactful when we think about return of your service. So complete other requirements about lifetime and the qualitative aspects of your service, or at least of your product, allowing you to give the service. Be aware also of a kind of resistance towards the users or the users that need to use your service itself. We are quite experienced in finding these resistances among typically the users when we think about the more service-oriented approach. And I think that's the key, of course, if we want to get it adopted, this shift, that we need to be aware of it, and that we need to find among, besides the hidden needs, also the resistance that exists.
All right. So the main message I get here is that we have different types of product service models, and they all differ in what you offer to the market and what the customer values. And then you have a lot of different examples that can prove that. Maybe we can go to a few of those examples. because we want to make it a bit concrete for you guys. So we've lined up a little bit of different types of models that we see in the market today in various sectors. For example, maybe Chris, you can elaborate a bit on lighting as a service at ETAP and what type of business model that is that you're putting into the market.
Okay, like that very much. Light as a service is basically a system in which a product is offered as a service. So we're more in the service systems here, not completely yet in the circular kind of systems. When subscribing to Light as a service, a customer pays a fixed fee for excellent lighting over a certain period, and that's a pretty long period. We're talking about contracts of between 10 and 20 years. And during that complete period, ETAP takes care of all the maintenance, make sure that the lighting is in excellent shape, is operating excellently during the complete term, and extends the lifetime as much as possible. And at the end of the term, there is a take back warranty. That's what the system is about.
That's a little bit different than other type of service systems that we see, or service models that we see. For example, there's also a quite dominant product as a service system in industrial equipment. For example, AMUS of Mitsubishi Electric, or elevator as a service, is also another type. It's where the customer does not invest or pay for the elevator as such anymore, but pays for the use of it. So this is effectively a use-oriented business model, where the customer pays a fixed fee per move and is de-worried of all extra hassle that comes with operating an elevator, like maintenance, like organizing inspections, like getting certifications. So all these different value elements are put in the one fixed fee per move. So it's actually a use-oriented business model, also linked to a circular model, because Mitsubishi refurbishes elevators, harvests parts after decommissioning of the elevator, and also prides itself on the fact that, again, lifetime is much longer than competitive elevators, I would say. So we see in lighting, we see it in industrial equipment. We also see product as a service systems. Quite also not quite a bit, but it's more a niche model in chemicals. For example, in chemicals, there are some examples where we see that users of chemical substances, like, for example, a Solvay, pays for the result of a certain process. For example, a drying process, you need chemicals to dry a certain amount of substance. And actually, you can pay for the amount of substance that is actually dried. So with Solvay, and also in the chemical sector, it's more a result-oriented business model, because you pay per ton dried stuff, and you don't pay for the chemical anymore that you use to dry your substance. So that's result-based. And the supplier also, Circular, commits himself to taking back and or upcycling the used chemicals that can be reused at the same or at other customers. So we always see that there is a difference in what is actually offered to the market and whether there is a circular model involved or not. So these are actually quite interesting models, and there's also a lot of information available publicly on the internet to take a little bit of a look around on what is actually what are the nitty-gritty details under these models under the hood. Also, in sectors that we wouldn't expect it, we see that the end of ownership, the product as a service system, is popping up. For example, in fashion, where we see that business models based on refurbish, renting, pre-owned garments are being put in place. There you can call it more a subscription model. Just to wrap things up a bit here now, we see that product as a service systems exist in many shapes. We have different types of product as a service system, and actually they depend on what is offered to the market and how it is offered. But for me, key elements are always that the producer picks up more risk because he wants to guarantee a certain performance, a certain outcome, a certain service, and generally keeps ownership of the way that of the product with which this service is being offered, which opens up the opportunity opportunity for a lot of interesting circular models to pop up. I do want to put a little bit of a side remark here. I do see that product as a service is a bit of a buzzword and is being used in a lot of publications. I do think that this type of model should only be used when strategically relevant for a company. And that's why I want to give the ball over to Chris now, because he will explain us a bit more why lighting as a service for the lighting industry in general and for ADAP specifically is an interesting model. And that should give us some insight in the strategic rationale of product as a service for lighting equipment producers.
Okay, thank you. Well, first of all, in the lighting business, the lighting world, a complete shift from one source to a next generation source has been going on over the last, say, 10 years. We have completely moved from traditional sources to LED as the predominant light source. Solid state lighting is more than just replacing a traditional source by an LED. There's a lot of technology that comes along with solid state lighting. Solid state lighting, LED lighting allows far easier light controls. The Internet of Things is playing an important role in the evolution of the building sector, and that is certainly also the case for lighting. So there has been a very big technology shift. That's not only true for lighting, that is true for a lot of technical products in the built environment nowadays. Mm-hmm. What you see there is that if you have a lot of added value products with a long lifetime, etc., a lot of pressure is being set on the traditional sales model, because as products become far more technology driven, far more complex, it's very difficult for customers, even for very well educated customers, to make the distinction between a sustainable product and a commodity product. So it's important, if you add a lot of value to your product, to find ways to bring that value to the customer. Because in a lot of, in most of the equipments we see is that there is a very fierce competition, and for lighting that is certainly true. The introduction of LED from the competition from the Far East has increased significantly. Fierce competition that shifts to low prices. So there is if you have very products with a high added value, long lifetimes, in case of lighting, low what we call lumen depreciation, meaning that the light level is kept all along the lifetime of the product at the same level. It's important that we as a manufacturer keep the risk, take the risk for the functioning of that product, and the customer doesn't need to understand all the ins and outs of the products to make a correct decision. So that is why we chose for a service model where we remain the owner. We take the full risk for the lifetime of the product, and we also in the services that we offer, we also guarantee the light level. It's not only the functioning of the lighting, we also guarantee the light level, the initial light level remaining present over the complete lifetime of the lighting installation. From a strategic point of view, if you work on sustainable products, putting in the market product as a service systems allows you, even forces you to partner up with suppliers, partners at so other partners who are serious about sustainability and who don't only see it as some window dressing to fashion up their marketing. And strategically, also we also see and we really experience that there is a demand for that in the market. Customers also faces with the question, yeah, you say that is important, that is important, that is important, but do you really expect us poor customers to understand all the ins and outs of very complex lighting products? Meanwhile, we will not do that. So offer us a solution where we don't have to do that. There is a demand in the market for service systems where people want to be, let's say, released from the need for detailed knowledge and want to be released from the responsibility for maintaining their own products.
I've tried to summarize it a bit for myself also on a piece of paper, because it's quite of a complex model. So we see from a manufacturer side that we see that more complex, more sustainable, but also more expensive products and technologies are being put on the market in the lighting industry. And we see that from a customer side, the knowledge and also the willingness to invest is not always following. So we are thinking that a normal sales-based model is not very interesting to reconcile these two sides. So a service model would be better to bring the value that a producer can to deliver it effectively to a customer, so that he can absorb it also in his financial and in his operations. That's a bit what I took away from this part, and why you are putting in place a product as a service system.
That is indeed a very good way to word it. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Now, I think so. So I think for me, it's very clear that we should analyze the market very well and see what are different trends that are popping up that make product as a service systems very relevant from a user point of view, from a customer point of view, also from a technology point of view. So only be using it when the market is pointing in that direction. As a last point in this introduction, I also think that we need to be aware of the fact of labeling product as a service systems as circular by design. This is also not the case. And for me, a very good website that explains the difference between a product as a service model and the way that you create circular value is actually the Circulator. The Circulator is designed by Vito, the circular economy team of Vito. And actually this website labels it very well. It's a very interesting website. You can play around and create your own circular business model. It's filled with cases, so it's very interesting to browse it a bit. But actually in this visualization, product as a service is positioned as a value proposition strategy, as a way to bring circular value to the market. And they also differentiate it very well from the normal concepts that we know around circular economy: recycle, refurbishment, reuse, redistribute. Actually, product as a service system is a way to bring circular value to the market, while refurbishment strategies, reuse strategies, maintenance strategies are actually circular value creating strategies that are able to create circular value. So there's a big difference between a circular business model and the way to bring it to the market, which is a product as a service system. And for me, this website and this visualization makes it very clear. However, from my point of view, I'm also convinced that a product as a service system and a circular model should go hand in hand, because a lot of strategies like reuse, remanufacturing can put a huge financial, economical lever under the business case, under the business model of a product as a service system, when implemented correctly, of course. I think we all know this kind of visualization where we have the different circular value loops, I would say. If you look at the profit potential, research and experience also shows that the shorter you loop, we rather reuse than refurbish, we rather refurbish than harvest the parts, we rather harvest the parts than recycle, the more you can keep the materials, product parts at value, at economical value, and the more interesting your business case becomes. So extending product lifetime, allowing for multiple uses without having to add too much value, is effectively creating a lot of economical value in your model too. So for me, the clue here is, as long as in a product service system, the producer stays owner of the product or has the ownership of the product, he has all the benefit of thinking very well what a good circular value creation strategy can be. And thinking about it very well also means getting a lot of economical benefits at the end of the ride. All right. I think that's good for an introduction on product as a service and how it links to the circular economy. I think it's time to go maybe a level deeper. I would like to go to some major building blocks that we see in product as a service model, in a product as a service model. For me, the first thing is of course the business model. It's trying to figure out what you will effectively offer to the market. Once you know what you will offer to the market, you need to think about how we will effectively deliver it. What circular value creation strategy will we use? Will we focus on reuse? Will we harvest parts? Will we focus on a purely recycling scheme? And how will our value chain, both forward and return, look like to bring it to the market? And then in the end, like we already said, product design and service design becomes very important when delivering this kind of model to the market. Linking these two gives you a business case, both from a producer and a customer perspective. Maybe let's go into a little bit more detail, also practically from Chris, how these different building blocks have been implemented in the lighting as a service system at ETAP, because I think this will give us a lot more information and a little bit more background.
Okay. Well, if you look at the strategic building blocks, first of all, you have the last offer itself, full service at a predictable cost with a full product lifecycle management. That is what we offer to the customers. Whereas in the traditional sales model, we mainly sell over installers. In the light as a service sales model, we directly go to building owners. And we mainly look for building owners who have a certain level of sustainability awareness. We see that, of course, there's a financing part in light as a service, and we see that some people ask us for quotation for light as a service mainly because of that. But they're pretty fast in the process, get diluted and go back to the traditional sales model. You need people who are convinced that long lifetimes, sustainability is important. You need people who want to be, let's say, released from all the worries that come with the maintenance of products and so on. And you need people who look for long-term relationships with a supplier, who look for, let's say, a confidential type of relationships, rather than just a one-time sale at the lowest possible price and then on to the next deal. To set that all up, of course, you need another type of value chain than the one we had before in our traditional sales. In our traditional sales, we have a value chain where we work with the electrical installer and where we work with consulting engineers who design electrical installations and design buildings, architects, of course, also. Here we need more parties in our value chain. We need, first of all, a financial partner or financial partners, because if you want to remain owner of the lighting, your revenues shift over time from a one-time 100% to, let's say, 10 times 10%, and you cannot do that without a financial backup. So you need a financial partner, either a bank or a third party that takes over the ownership temporarily, and then you're talking about leasing constructions. A lot of parties are active in the market there. You also need a partner for installation, because it's not, let's say, we remain owner and we deliver the complete service to the customer, including installation. That does not imply that we will install all of the products ourselves and try to put our regular customers, the installers, out of business. That's certainly not the intent. We are not an installation company, and we rely on partners for installation as well as for the maintenance. Installations are not only electrical installation companies are not only the ones who install lighting, but they are also the ones who maintain the lighting. And then in the complete value chain, we also need partners for end-of-life management, because there again, when it comes to extending the lifetime, we can do a lot ourselves. When it comes to end-of-life processing, let's say parts harvesting and so on, you need other type of companies. You cannot you cannot in an economically feasible way do that with people who normally do the production of the equipment. They are simply too expensive. So you need companies who are used to let's say do end-of-life processing, who work with parties in the social economy. There again, you have that kind of partnership and so on. Very important for us as well, that is not a consequence of our choice for LAS. It's perhaps in the first place the reason we chose for LAS is product and service design. You need to design for a long lifetime. If you design for a low cost, you don't have the products that are fit for this kind of business model. So you need to design for a long lifetime, and that not only means that LEDs will keep on giving light for a certain amount of time, because all of the LEDs do that, but that means that the LEDs keep on producing the level of light that is required for the application over the complete term of the contract. You also need to design for a low maintenance cost, because if you don't design for a low maintenance cost, you either will delude your customer, which is not a good thing to do, or you will have very high maintenance costs over the term of the contract, and you will not have a profitable business. And in our case, we also want to design for circularity, because we now have a product service system in place, and that is going well, working well. But we want to go beyond that and go for full circularity. Really, that is what we want to do. That's what the choices we made at ETAP.
My takeaway then, because something triggered me in your explanation, Chris, so you actually say that a product as a service system or a product as a service system can be interesting from a current design perspective. We have a product that is high quality, that is high, that has a long lifetime, that has a high perception of quality too. So we might as well put it in a product service system. That's one way to look at things. Or you can say our customer needs a product as a service system. It fits his or her requirements, so we will alter our design to make our product fit in a product as a service system better. So you have it from both ways.
Indeed.
Yeah. I will go a bit. I'm looking at a bit at the time. We have some other messages to make too. So I will just go into product and service design a bit more, because I want to open up for David, who can take the product design part a little bit to a higher level, who will explain a little bit of tips and tricks on how to go about with product design in product as a service systems.
Yeah, indeed, some practical things maybe related to product design. So basically, we collaborated together with Chris on this topic, but also in general, when we think about a product as a service, typically the main user-centered focus from product design remains, but the objectives they shift, in fact. So like the user-centeredness, there is of course the approach to research and understand the real hidden needs, but now we go much beyond ergonomics or just the usability, because we need to look at the more human factor engineering, because we want to have a kind of a very efficient way in doing the maintenance. Otherwise, it will never give the sufficient return. So viability becomes too critical. And also, as mentioned already, the adoption. And I think that's very critical, of course, because we shift, and then you could wonder yourself, and that's the key, of course, who is the stakeholder? We used to focus in product design towards the end consumer, who normally is the customer who buys the product. But you see that things, and Chris explained already, the stakeholders becomes much more complex situation and becomes very crucial to have a good understanding. Chris mentioned it already for the viability with the case sustainability creates sustainable business too. So that's the great thing about it. But only, of course, if the product design and engineering is adapted in the right way, related to the materials, and indeed to define what material can be taken back and which one end up in the loop and those kind of things. Design for evolution. Modularity comes back in, and modularity used to be a cool thing to make mass customization available or doable. But now this also has another purpose. We want the modularity system more related to the needs in the maintenance things. So you see the Fairphone example over there, but we also discussed during the project together with Chris' team to define indeed which components need to become modular to make an appliance usable for the circular thinking, or to become used as light as a service. And a strong storytelling, of course. ETAP does it quite well, very well, but indeed it becomes critical if you are in a transition mode between already offering product as a service, but in the meantime doing just old school product business. And I think this is applicable for a lot of companies. So that's, I think, a key challenge because you're in fact doing both things at the same time, and still the message needs to be quite clear. So maybe some product design tips. So looking really in what the product makes it usable to become applicable for a service model. And as mentioned already, this user-centric research, that's key, and that is applied or is important for all stakeholders. Prototype and validate remains the same thing as is. So that's, I think that is typical product business. But you know, when we want to talk about validation or prototyping or hiring a focus group or a focus panel discussion, it used to be more to get a kind of a confirmation to detect whether a product creates a kind of a wow feeling. And now we use this product and validation steps more as a kind of a failure mode and effect analysis related to the usability, because of course, if we do not succeed in making the maintenance usable and failure free in one way or another, then of course the return becomes very critical. Select the right materials. Also the life cycle analysis is applicable, but comes with, again, another approach, another purpose. And the last topic, the feedback mechanism. And now, of course, the IoT comes in. Chris already mentioned it. That's, of course, a cool thing that we could integrate smart sensoring technology those days. And they make sense, definitely, when we think about the service models over here, because then we are able to measure and to just steer a little bit the things, and to capture the lessons learned and improve the process.
Okay.
Chris, some visuals over there that maybe you can explain.
Yeah, this is an exercise we did together with Möbius and Verhaert, where we took one of our existing products and we kind of redesigned it for easier maintenance, easier upgradability, easier remanufacturability. So what you can see on top is a kind of cassette system where the LEDs and the driver are integrated, and you can replace that in one move. The second image from the top is a way to make the driver, which is the weakest part of a lighting fitting, to make the driver easier accessible for replacement. And the last drawings are just another way of installing LEDs in the lighting systems that we have today, more in a plug and play mode than the in-house manufacturing mode that we have today. So these are a number of exercises that have been done and that are very useful for us to make the product easier to maintain and easier to upgrade.
Yeah, but
Okay.
indeed, if I can interfere, the modularity is quite clear over here, but the modularity comes to allow a better maintenance and to it is in fact part of the design for the circularity. And indeed, if we think about the life cycle analysis, then you have to define indeed what the most critical part is and make that part more accessible and make that part become the key of the service or maintenance model. And that's a little bit the way of thinking. So in which the product design tools become a little bit redefined because the objective has shifted.
Yeah.
All right. Just for your reference, and maybe to review in your own time, David, Chris, and I have put some interesting sources of inspiration for eco-design tips on a row and on one slide with some useful references. So feel free to browse it, feel free to Google it, because I'm sure that both in product standards, in the standard lean toolkit, and in some online tools, you will find a lot of eco-design inspiration. So I think we're very aligned on the fact that product design is important, and you should think it through, because a good product design can save you a lot of worries and a lot of costs in your product as a service model. One part of the exercise that we also did at ETAP is trying to look for if we alter design in one way or another, if we invest in a more expensive design on this aspect or a more expensive or agile design in this aspect, how will we effectively earn it back in our business model? And that actually brings us to the business casing step. I do think that it's very important to assess the viability of your business model also. I don't think it should be overly complex to business case it. You just use the same things that you always use to calculate the business case of a business model. You map the value chain, you assess what drives my cost, you estimate the inputs, and you try to put it all together in cost and revenues. It's like any other business case, but I do see that in product as a service, I see some points of attention. For us, for example, for ETAP, it was kind of a challenge to model the use phase of the product. You have to get into detail in what costs are driven in the use phase, in the use by the customer, in the maintenance, in the decommissioning of the product, which were costs that were not always very well known and very well predictable for us. So I think a product as a service system adds this complexity in business casing. And also we saw that modeling the end of life phase of the product was not that straightforward. Trying to model what positive impact reusing certain parts, what positive impact that has, trying to estimate how much of a second-hand market you can unlock in with second-hand lighting equipment, for example, was not an easy thing to do. So modeling the end of life phase on the product requires a lot of effort and also a lot of research. For us, it was interesting to just think in business casing in different concepts. We had to think a little bit, model different concepts in terms of circular value creation strategies. We try to model, what if we reuse this? What if we harvest this part? What if we can remanufacture this part of the equipment? So I think modeling in different concepts is very, very interesting, and also modeling in different scenarios, because different scenarios can have a different impact on the life cycle cost of your business model. For example, you saw on the previous slide that we had a lot of different design scenarios, product design scenarios, each with their own benefits, each with their own cost, each with their own product cost also. So trying to take a good look at what product design alternatives you have and what return on investment they would generate in your business model, I think is key to make good design choices also. Okay, I'm looking at the time a bit. I will try to combine a practical approach for the product as a service journey with the key learnings that we have here, some key takeaways. So let me go to that slide immediately. I think if you look at all the content we've covered today, that there are somewhat 4 points to take away from all this information. I think first of all, it's important to analyze the market very well. That would be a first step always, to take a look at in what market am I playing, with what product offering am I playing, and do I see a customer need for a product as a service system? and things to scan are like a very robust technology, overly complex product, a customer that is having a hard time to invest, also a product that generates an outcome that is very interesting for the customer, but the product is not. So these are a couple of things that should trigger that should give you a little bit of red lights when you see these things popping up in your market. I think it's then relevant to choose the adequate product as a service model. You see that you have different flavors, different types, and we should then try to design the service around it and tailor it to the customer that you're looking to service. So analyzing very well whether you need a product as a service model or not, for me, is the first thing. The second thing is to always think about, I can offer a product as a service system, but what is the circular business model, the circular value creation strategy that I will put behind it? What is the weak point in my product that I need to redesign around? What is the remanufacturability? What is the reusability? And in what loop will I play? And then you can build a tangible roadmap for design, for operations, for reverse logistics. You can build around the reverse stream. What I also learned from Chris, he explained me a lot, is that you cannot try to close the complete loop on your own. You have to rely on some kind of ecosystem of partners to add to your system. For example, Chris mentioned end-of-life partners, installation partners, maintenance partners, people that have a lot of experience in doing specific things with your product. So it's not because you are taking responsibility and risk of a lot of things in your product as a service system. It does not mean that you have to execute them all by yourself. And then in the end, I think at the end, when you have your product as a service system a bit in place on paper, I think it's very important to assess the viability of your model and test some assumptions, because I've seen in the market that a lot of companies take it for granted that a product as a service system is automatically, both financially, economically, and ecologically, more favorable than a normal sales-based system, which is not the case. Only when implemented correctly, it can be economically very attractive, and also when implemented correctly, it can be ecologically, from a sustainability point of view, attractive. So taking these things for granted should not be done and should be tested at the end of your implementation. Okay. I think we've talked enough. I think we will open up for a bit of questions. I see a few questions in the box, so I will try to take a look what the most important ones are. We have here a question for Chris, where we see you said in the beginning apparently that product as a service system is interesting in the built environment. What are other specific materials or utilities, or a building is a very large place with a lot of different products. Are there other types or other parts of the building that are also being servitized?
Oh, there certainly are. I saw an example last week of a meeting room as a service, where a company offers a complete meeting room as a service, so including all the video conferencing material, what have you, all the equipment that comes with a modern well-equipped meeting room. So that is an example. People in the airco world are in the HVAC world are also thinking about that. There are a bit less complex perhaps, but partitions, walls, removable walls or easily adjustable walls that are being offered as a service. There's a lot of things going on, and there's a number of projects, and I'm mainly thinking now about Seashed in Limburg, and then the project in Oevel, Westerlo, where a complete building is being built in a circular way, and where product service systems come in place very much. Yeah.
Okay, and an extra question that I saw in the chat box then related to that is how do we try to make this feasible for customers? Do customers pay different service fees separately for the different things that they want to buy as a service, or is there a player that bills the customer simultaneously? It's like having different subscriptions at once? Is there already an idea in the built environment value chain how the customer will eventually pay for this, all these different services provided? Is it separately to the different providers?
Well, today it's separately because everyone offers his system, but no doubt there will be parties like project developers or main entrepreneurs who will cover that for the customer, because that's a question that often pops up with customers. If you're talking about only a renovation of the lighting, LAS is a very attractive system. If you're talking about a complete new building, of course, and you want to do that for LAS, for your meeting room, for your air conditioning, etc., it becomes pretty complex for the customer to master, well, to administer all of that. And there is a demand in the market to globalize that a little bit, so they don't have to interfere with all the individual parties. But that does not imply that the product responsibility will also shift from the manufacturer to that other party, because that other party will also cover itself, and the product responsibility, the risk will remain with the manufacturer in these cases.
Yeah. I think it's a sector on the move, the built environment sector, especially in Belgium. We see that the concept of circular building, also with the Green Deal, circular building is picking up a lot of traction. So I think we will have to follow that sector up close the coming years to see what we can learn and what extra developments we have there.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm looking at the time a bit. I think we're at the end of our hour. I hope you have enjoyed the talk we had. We tried to cover a lot of ground, but we tried to also extract a bit useful tips and also the main parts of what for us attention points are in product as a service system. It's definitely a system where we see a lot of potential in the market to explore. So we hope to see a lot of new models and examples of these popping up in the coming years. I think all is left for me is to thank my two colleagues, Chris and David, for joining me on this webinar, and also you for subscribing. Any other questions you can have, you can for sure always email us, you can tweet us, you can follow us on LinkedIn, and we will for sure get in contact to discuss this more. We thank everybody for their attention and hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.